how's it going? It's Jamie, the crafty DIY guy, and I'm back. I've got my top 20 DIYs of 2020 for you today. I am so excited to share all of these videos with you. It was fun going back through all of my videos over the last year and putting together this compilation video for you. You're gonna see some very rough cuts of when I first started doing these projects up until now. And seriously, all of these have been fun to do, and they've all had one thing in common, and that has been my love for creating and sharing with all of you guys. If you are my OGs, you know you mean the world to me. Thank you so much. If you are a newbie or newer to the channel as of this year, I welcome you as well. Thank you guys so much for the support over this last year. I could not have done this pandemic without you. And then, of course, if you are brand new to the channel, checking me out for the first time, welcome. I hope this project video gives you a good idea of the types of things that I'm going to be doing into 2021. So let's get into it. First project, you are going to need some of these carpenter biscuits that you can pick up at your local hardware store. Also, I grabbed a round mirror when I was at Dollar Tree, as well as my favorite hole filler, or AKA spackle. You'll notice that each one of your biscuits has an embossed number on it, and that's really what you want to cover up. So I'm just taking some of my spackle and just going through and kind of plugging the hole of each one of those biscuits. And this only took about 15-20 minutes, and then I let everything dry. I think maybe overall, maybe an hour. After everything was good and dry, then I separated my mirror from the frame and from that cardboard backing. I flipped that cardboard backing upside down and then just started to glue those petals directly down to the back of the mirror, just kind of working my way all the way around until it looked like this when everything had dried. I took everything outside and spray painted it with this purple spray paint from Rust-Oleum. I really love this purple spray paint. It worked really well and it gave good coverage. After everything was dried, I took it inside and just started to reassemble the mirror right onto the backing itself. And this is what it looks like when it's on the wall. I love this. I think it's super cool. I am going to repaint this today, though. I think it would look absolutely amazing in an antique gold finish. So that is my project for today. All right, for our next project, you are going to need one of these utility hooks, a bamboo cutting board, and also a locker mirror, which I all picked up at my local Dollar Tree store. The first thing I'm going to do is tape off my mirror. I did try to pry this mirror out of here, but that was impossible. And rather than breaking that mirror and having 7 years of bad luck, I just decided to go ahead and tape this off. I'm a little awkward at this. I don't know why. It took me like 675 pieces of tape in order to get this mirror covered, but I think I did a good job ultimately, and it looked like this. Then I took everything outside and spray painted it with my hammered black spray paint from Rust-Oleum. Also, I remembered that I needed to spray paint this utility hook, so I clipped off this utility hook to make it the same size as my cutting board, and clearly I'm shaking the camera there, so I apologize for that. And after I was able to do this, I took it outside and spray painted it with that same black hammered spray paint. I went inside and I decided to age up my bamboo cutting board just a little bit. I wanted this to have kind of a, just a little bit more of an aged look. It was a slippery little sucker. And so I went with my antiquing wax from Waverly, and again, just rubbing it up and down and then wiping off any excess. After everything had dried, I took it inside and revealed the mirror that was behind that tape. It actually worked out really well. I did notice that there was a little bit of the pink showing through, so I just took my Sharpie paint pen and just went in on the edges and just kind of cleaned that up. And then if there was any of that Sharpie that ended up on the mirror, I just took a little bit of nail polish on a Q-tip and just wiped it off that way, and it came off really easily. Then it was time to start assembling everything, so I flipped my cutting board over. I took my utility hook and just kind of eyeballed where I wanted it to go, and then I took out my staple gun and just stapled this to the back. I made sure that the staple gun was at the top of each one of those, hitting that tripod once again. Apologies, guys. And then I took some hot glue and put a generous helping on that. After everything dried, I flipped it over onto the other side and then glued my mirror down to the center of my board. And this is what it looks like when it's done. Again, I love this. I think it's super modern looking. It definitely has that industrial vibe, and I think I'm going to hang this one in my office. All right, for our next project, you're going to take a Dollar Tree wire wastebasket and some of these wire brushes that you can grab from the hardware section. The first thing you're going to do is remove all of these needles from your wire brush. Now, they will put up a fight, but you can win this. I grabbed a very sturdy kind of pair of wire clippers or wire thingies. I don't know what they're called. And I just removed the needles from each one of these wire brushes. And then I went in with my hole filler or my spackle and just filled in the holes. I don't know why that was so awkward sounding. Anyway, after everything had dried, I set these aside, and then it was time to start assembling my table legs or my planter legs. Then you're going to take your table legs and you're going to make sure that that hole is facing down, and then the spackled side is going to be up against the basket itself. And the reason why you're going to do this is well, you'll see in a little while why you're gonna do it that way. So I took a screw and screwed it into the top of the table leg, but the screw wasn't holding it by itself because it was the head of the screw was smaller than the webbing of the basket. So then I took my staple gun and stapled each one of these legs to the basket itself, and that worked out really, really good. It held it very, very nicely. So after all that was done, this is kind of what it looks like. And I don't know, I felt like it was missing something. So I decided to go ahead and pull out my painter's tape, and I taped off the edges of the legs onto the basket so I could just paint everything. So I took my Waverly ink chalk paint and decided to go ahead and paint these legs black. And I'm so glad that I did because I really love the way that this turned out. And that painter's tape worked out perfectly, so I was lucky. Then the holes at the bottom that you remember I told you to save or to point south, I took some nautical rope and fed it through there, and then I just burned off those frayed edges. And then again, this is what it looks like when it's all done. I love this. I think it's super versatile. I think it's got a cool kind of a modern look. It definitely could skew farmhouse or even industrial very, very easily. I took a wooden paper plate, a dowel rod, a piece of scrap wood, and a lighter. So take your paper or your wood plate, don't use a paper plate, wood plate, and char the edges of this. I'm literally just going around small sections at a time and charring it, getting it to the kind of look, the burned look that I like. And then I'm going to shake it off. I'm going to shake it vigorously and blow out that flame and then start it on another section. So eventually your wood will look like this. Obviously, I also burned out that center section as well. I then went inside and drilled a hole in my scrap wood that was large enough for my dowel rod. And then I took my Waverly ink chalk paint and just did one coat all the way around the base and that dowel rod as well. And then I took my antiquing wax also from Waverly and just covered the wood in a fairly decent amount of antiquing wax. I didn't go as heavy in all areas though with this, and I kind of did it that way on purpose. I wiped off any of the excess, glued it to the dowel rod, and this is what the finished product looks like. Again, I love this. I think it's super contemporary. It's super modern. It's going to stay in my office, and it will be in the background of many of my future videos. It's 2 glass vases from Dollar Tree. I used these in 2 different sizes. I also grabbed some of these poster letters from Dollar Tree and some wick wood candle lids. These are from Walmart, and rubbing alcohol. All of this cost me about $8. Believe it or not, these wick wood candle lids fit perfectly on the glass vases from Dollar Tree. Now, the one thing I will say is that they do smell like the candle that you purchase. So you'll want to give them a really, really good washing. I washed them in antibacterial soap and then also did a good dousing of rubbing alcohol on them. Unfortunately, the smell did not completely come out, so I would encourage you to wrap your food in food-safe plastic. Now take your lids outside and simply just spray paint them. I went with this oil rubbed black bronze color because it's going to fit perfectly in my kitchen. The next thing you're going to want to do is apply your letters directly to the glass. Now, you're not going to want to smooth these down extra hard. You're just going to want to put them on the glass and make sure there's a good contact between the glass and the lettering so none of your paint seeps through. You can see on this one, I'm spelling out the word carb. And I originally started with one with the words yum on it, but unfortunately, the yum vase did not turn out quite as well as I was hoping for. So we went with something a little different. And I did one that said carb, and then I did another one that says eat. Once my letters were stuck, I did take them outside to spray paint, and I just gave them each a thin coating, 2 coats total of paint. As you can see here, my yum just was not working out really well. The lettering was sticking, the paint was starting to peel, so I scrapped that one and went with the second version, eat and carb. These turned out perfectly. And here they are, the finished product. I've got my carbs, my pasta in the carb container, and more pasta in the eat container. I think they are perfect on my countertops. They look fantastic next to my stove, and I am thrilled with the way that these turned out. They are the perfect addition to my industrial farmhouse kitchen. What I did was take my white bird and paint it with 2 coats of black chalk paint. I just wanted to give it a really nice matte finish, almost like a metallic. And then after that, I took my Jenga wood blocks, glued them together in a tower where I was able to kind of alternate the blocks. And I took it outside and spray painted it brown. And then I put some gold metallic spray paint right over top of the brown while it was still wet, and then glued the bird on top of the tower. And this is what it looks like on my mantelpiece. I absolutely love it. I think it's a great addition to my decor, and it fits in perfectly with my decorating scheme. Next project, I wanted to go ahead and start working on my nautical rope placemats. Now for this project, I literally just took my nautical rope, put it on top of some parchment paper, and then started gluing it together like this in a circular motion. I will say that this ended up taking a lot more nautical rope than I expected. I used 4 packages of the 9.5-foot nautical rope per placemat. The great thing about doing it on the parchment paper was that the glue never was able to stick perfectly to the parchment paper, so it made moving it around really, really easily. And then for the next part here, you can see that it's still pretty flexible, so you want to give it a nice sturdy backing. What I did was I just took a piece of scrap cardboard that I have here. It's not pretty, but it's going to be on the bottom side of the placemat, and it's going to definitely help hold this together. So I just took my Gorilla spray adhesive and just covered the back of that cardboard really good with that spray glue, and then just glued it down to the back of that placemat and let it dry nice and solid. Then after I had all 4 of my placemats ready to go with the cardboard backing and with the glue dry, of course, then I took my lighter and just kind of burned off some of the fringy edges that this nautical rope tends to get from Dollar Tree to give it a more clean, kind of refined look. And here are my final 4 placemats. I absolutely love the way that these look. Now I'm going to add the final touch to the dining room with some navy and nautical rope mirrors. I decided to go ahead and use both of the burner covers. So I used 2 different size mirrors. This first one is one of the smaller candle mirrors that I just kind of centered up in the middle of the mirror. And then I started to wrap around the nautical rope just gluing it straight down to the burner cover itself. And I repeated this process with the larger mirror as well. That way I could have two different size mirrors that would complement each other. And then lastly, again, burning off those edges. And this is what the final products look like on the wall. I love these. I think that they look perfect and they are a great tie-in to the dining room as a whole. The first thing I grabbed was my Dollar Tree sander, and I simply just sanded down the red board as well as my white board, getting them as smooth as possible. I spray painted the white board with 2 coats of Rust-Oleum, and I also spray painted the red board with 2 coats of Rust-Oleum paint. For the industrial version of this project, I wanted to use twine to hold these candle holders onto my board. And for the more farmhouse version, I wanted to use this striped ribbon that I purchased at Walmart. I simply just twisted it around the neck of the bottle. For my holes, I went ahead and just eyeballed these and marked them with my Dollar Tree ruler and then simply drilled through. And as you can see, I left myself plenty of ribbon to be able to feed the candle holders through onto each side, trimming off the edges and gluing them down. I also repeated this same exact process with the industrial version of this, using either the twine or the nautical rope. For this last version, I wanted to go ahead and add a little decorative touch to the farmhouse version. So I made this holder with my striped ribbon and then created this cute, adorable little bow to finish it off at the top. And then one last embellishment to the farmhouse version. I took my Dollar Tree stencil out and just free-handed painted, filled in the holes of this stencil that I did. And I repeated this process on the top and the bottom of this candle holder. And here you can see my finished farmhouse version of my Dollar Tree candle holder and the industrial version of my Dollar Tree candle holder. The first thing I did after removing the plastic from my 3 boards was decide that I didn't want to stain or paint them anymore. I decided to keep them natural. Then I took an index card and just popped a hole in it with my hole punch and then used that as a template to mark each one of my boards on the 4 corners. After I was done with that, I went ahead and pulled out the drill and just literally started drilling on all 4 corners where those 4 X's marked the spot. I then took some Dollar Tree twine and wrapped it around the 3 binder rings that I was using on each one of my shelves. I took a little bit of tape and just taped off each one of the ends of my nautical rope. That way it was easier to feed through the holes themselves. Once I had one side done, then it was time to go ahead and take that binder ring and feed my nautical rope through that. It's important, you're going to have 2 pieces of rope and you want each rope to feed through the binder ring itself because you're going to use this to hang it on the wall. And once I had my rope and my binder rings all fed through properly, then I went ahead and just tied knots in the end of each rope and then just pulled them extra tight with my pliers. And this is what they look like in the finished guest bedroom. I absolutely love them. I think they look so classic and so perfect. And each shelf was literally made for less than $2 each. I took 2 hula hoops, a small child-sized one and an adult one. I also grabbed a set of dessert plates from Dollar Tree. These come in an 8-pack and they're typically clear. This gold one was just left over from an old project that I had. I also grabbed some oversized popsicle sticks. I was able to get these on Amazon. And then a tomato cage from Dollar Tree as well. And then you can have some embellishments or twine. I ended up not using them. Then first thing you're going to do is remove this foil sticker from your hula hoops. This is a little tedious, but once you get it going, it does move pretty fast. And you're just going to continue to pull all this off. And you'll see here in a second, your hula hoops will separate, and that's totally fine. You actually need to do that because you want to get rid of those little beads that are inside there, and then simply just use electrical tape and tape it back together. and then I laid my 2 rings kind of out, and then I took my tomato cage bars and just cut them down to size so they would fit within the circle, the smaller circle, and then just did a crisscross formation, and then I hot glued my gold plate in the center on the top. I actually didn't film this part, but I think you kind of get the idea. And then I laid out my numbers. I started off with 3, and then 6, and then 9 and 12. And then as I worked my way around the clock, I finished the numbers kind of like you see here, and just kind of started gluing everything down with some hot glue. I then flipped this over and I took my remaining tomato bars and just cut them down into smaller sizes to help brace the outer ring. I took everything outside after the hot glue had dried and did 3 coats of a light black. It's a 3 light coats of paint. I used a black hammered spray paint for this. And this is what my farmhouse clock looks like on my mantle. I am obsessed. I absolutely love this. And then I decided to take it outside because I thought it would look really good on the side of my house as some front porch decoration. Right, everyone, for our first project, you're going to need one of these Dollar Tree windmills, a piece of scrap wood, and a wooden dowel rod that I also picked up at Dollar Tree. Go ahead and drill a hole in the center of your piece of scrap wood. This is going to enable you to prop that dowel rod right up in the center there. I had to put a little force down on it to get it going through there because this was a piece of an old countertop, actually. And then go ahead and add a little bit of hot glue down in the middle of your hole, and then just put your dowel rod directly down in there like so. I went ahead and just forced it down in there, and then any of that hot glue that had kind of oozed out, I just kind of wiped that away with my finger and then kept moving right along. And then I took my pliers and I kind of flattened out the top of my dowel rod there. I wanted that to have a nice grip and a nice hold to the back of the windmill. So I added a kind of nice dollop of hot glue there and then just directly glued this down. And you can also see that outside ring of the windmill. I went ahead and I put a little bit of super glue on the back side of that as well. That way it would just glue it directly down to the dowel rod, and just waited for it to dry. And then once it dried, it looks like this. I really like the way that it looks even like this. Then I took it outside and I spray painted it all the same exact color. I used a Rust-Oleum hammered black spray paint, and I really love the way that this turned out. I think it's super contemporary. It could go with modern farmhouse. It could go with regular farmhouse. There's a lot of different ways that you could do this, and really makes a nice impact on your decor. Project number 2, you may remember when I did my garage haul I think it was a couple months ago now, I grabbed these metal trays, and I loved these, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I had 2 of these kind of like I don't know what they are, like little side dish bowls. I had some jinglewood blocks, and then I saw this video that, according to Kat, did, and she used these scoops as sconces, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Then I also had some of my Gorilla like super glue, and then that Rust-Oleum black hammered paint once again. So this was going to be the perfect combination to turn these trays into sconces. So to build my sconces, first thing I did was put some of this Gorilla Super Glue down in the bottom of my pet scoop. And then I took the wood block, the Jenga wood block, and just set that down on top. And then I also repeated that on the second one. You'll see a little bit of an overhang there, and I did that on purpose because I want the candle holder to be more kind of straight, and that's what those small little glass bowls are going to be used for. So I just repeated this on both of these, and then once it was done, I just set them aside to dry. You don't see it there, but I do add the little glass bowls to the top of that too, and just literally put them aside and let them dry. And I did let them dry actually overnight before I started to spray paint them or do anything else with them. So after everything dried, this is what it's going to look like. That way I can put those candles right in the base of those little glass bowls. So I took the scoops outside and spray painted them with that hammered black spray paint once again, doing the backside and the front side to make sure that I had good coverage all the way around. And then after they were dry, this is what they looked like. I really liked the way that these looked. And I also love that you could still see the scoop lines, or the 2 cup and the 1 cup lines in the back there. And then essentially what we're going to be doing is gluing these directly down to these metal plates, or these metal platters. I'm using I'm using E6000, and it's actually black E6000. And then I'm adding a little bit of hot glue just to help speed that E6000 along. I love E6000. I wish they had a quick dry formula, but they don't. So this is the way I work around that and get it to dry a lot faster. And now that everything is dry, this is what these sconces look like. I absolutely love these. They are perfect for farmhouse, perfect for modern farmhouse. First thing I did was take one of my Dollar Tree planters. This is the stackable planter. And I just took my wood burning tool and burned a hole in the bottom of it. Now, my plan was to completely cut out this circle that runs along the middle of this planter here. And so I just poked small holes in it and just worked my way around with my tool until I had a complete hole there. Then I took the stackable planter outside. I put it in the center of my patio table, and I put the umbrella right down the middle of it. Guys, this was so easy, and look, it spins. You can put condiments in it. You can put silverware in it if you're getting ready to have a birthday party or a barbecue. The other thing you can do is put some candles in it for a romantic night. This has a lot of versatility. And guess what? You could also put plants in it. Go figure. And our next project is going to be a fun one. We're going to use some of this fun ribbon or wire leaf stuff that I got on Amazon. Also, we're going to grab one of these Dollar Tree home signs. This one has seen a better day. And then also I have this leftover holiday sign, and we're just going to remove this metal piece and save this for another project. First thing we're going to do is start painting our board. I'm just using my Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint, and I'm just giving this 2 good coatings of chalk paint so we can move on to the faux wood technique that you guys are going to absolutely love. But before I do that, I am going to separate my letters and pull really, really hard to actually get them separated, and then I'm going to take them outside and we're going to give them 2 coats of my dark steel paint. And now on to the faux wood technique. I'm using a product called Retique-It. Retique-It is a paint that enables you to stain a painted surface. I know that sounds crazy, but it is a very cool product. Anything that is painted that you want to have a wood surface without having to strip it, you paint it with this Retique-It product. And we're going to put 2 coats of Retique-It on here. And what this paint is it's actually a paint that has a texture in it. So the texture is going to hold a stain. So like a normal wood stain that you would use on an unfinished piece of wood, you will be able to stain this board to look like real wood. I'm telling you guys, it's crazy. It sounds crazy, but it works. It's a little stinky. It does work though. All right, now that everything is dry, I am going to take some Old English shoe polish. You can use regular wood stain as well if you'd like on this. I didn't have any wood stain, so I'm using shoe polish instead. As you can see, the wood grain is really starting to show through from the texture that's in that Retique-It that I told you about. And you will just kind of continue to go back and forth in the same motion. I like to go up and down with my stain, or in this case with my shoe polish, until you achieve that color. Look how gorgeous that color is. I took my pencil and then just drew in some lines to give it a more wood grain look. And then I took each one of my letters and glued them on top of my wood grain like so. I also took my ribbon that I had, that little viney ribbon, I don't know what it's called, and just kind of created my O kind of like so, and then just took some of my antiquing wax that was left over on the brush and just went over the edges and lightly across the tops of each letter. It gave it a kind of a cool, aged, galvanized look that I was really, really happy with. And this is what the finished product looks like. I think this is super adorable. It's kind of a cool, modern farmhouse way of welcoming you home. How cute was that? Our final project, we're going to grab 3 Dollar Tree candle holders. We're also going to grab 3 of these Crafter Square boxes and some Dollar Tree rocks. All you're going to do with the rocks is really just weigh down the boxes. So you can put a couple rocks in each box and then put the drawer in backwards, kind of like you see here. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of hot glue and just seal those drawers shut. That way they don't slide out. The next thing I'm going to do is take my Quick Hold E6000 and I'm going to glue these glass candle holders right on top of those wooden blocks, kind of like you see here. Sorry about being out of frame there. You would think I would know what I'm doing by now with this YouTube thing. But now you can see I'm just kind of placing it exactly in the center of each cube, and I'm just going to repeat that with each one of my blocks, kind of like so. It took about an hour for my E6000 to dry. Once that happened, I took everything outside and gave it a nice coating of my flat black spray paint from Rust-Oleum. I did 2 coats to give it this gorgeous finish, and then after everything was dry, I took it inside, and this is what they look like on the mantle. I love these so much. I saw something very similar in a very high-end catalog that was about $85. I am thrilled with the way these turned out. For our next project, you're going to take one of these plastic trays from Dollar Tree. You can find this in the garden section. And then you're also going to grab the brand new nautical rope that Dollar Tree has out that is in this cream color. There are several different sizes out there. Be cautious when you're picking yours up. I grabbed the 11-foot batch versus the smaller ones. So I grabbed 3 of those. I'm definitely not going to need all 3 of those, but I just wanted you to be able to see. So go ahead and trim off the end of your rope just to get rid of that piece of tape that's there. You can try and cut that tape off if you want. It was just easier for me to just hack it off. So I took my tray, flipped it upside down, and then literally I'm going to start just gluing my nautical rope all around the bottom of this tray. Now, I'm going to do this in 2 rows, and I'm going to work my way all the way around. And you can see that I'm not putting glue on like every single bit, but I am using a decent amount of glue. And the reason why I'm doing this is because this is kind of on the side of this tray. I want this to be as solid as possible. And then when you flip this back over, you'll see that the 2 rows of the nautical rope that you're doing on this kind of flip side is going to be plenty. You're not going to need any other additional nautical rope on there because you will be covering this completely, and nobody will really be able to tell unless they pick it up. And if they pick it up and look at it underneath, then they're butt heads. And when you're done gluing everything, this is what it will look like all the way around. If you need to go in and touch up any little places with some glue, it's pretty easy to do this. This is a cotton rope, so it's not as kind of harsh or stiff, I would say, as the regular nautical rope. And then for this part, I'm going to go ahead and just put some glue on the end here and then try not to totally burn my hands off. And then I'm just going to start to glue this down, and I'm going to work my way around the top of the tray. Now this looks like I'm gluing it directly down on the rope, but I'm actually not. I'm gluing right along that top edge. And yeah, it's going to overlap a little bit onto that rope, and that's totally fine. And then what you're going to do is work your rope all the way around and completely cover the entire base of your tray. And as you can see, you're going to keep wrapping and wrapping and wrapping all of that nautical rope all the way around until you've completely covered the base of your tray. Some of the grooves and some of the dips that are in the tray itself that kind of are designed really to kind of take the water away from your plants and your pots. You may have to add a little bit of extra glue in those holes just to make sure that your rope is held down really nicely. But again, you'll just work your way all the way around until you've got this tray completely covered. Then to create some handles on my tray, I took a piece of nautical rope and just cut it in half. I made sure that each end was the same length, and then I literally just glued this down on top of the existing nautical rope. I did overlap it just a little bit so it would go onto that clear plastic, and this is what the tray looks like with the handles. Super cute, right? Now, this is what it looks like in the bathroom. You could easily use this for candles and some Dollar Tree succulents or some rocks or all of the above. This is how it's actually going to stay in my bathroom, and I absolutely love this. This project, you are going to need 2 of these Dollar Tree candle holders. These are kind of rounded. They almost look like wine glasses, but they've got that little fluted bottom. And then you're going to take some of these tall, skinny Dollar Tree candlesticks, and I grabbed 2 that were in 2 different heights because I thought that would look really good as 2 candle holders. And then also for this project, you're going to need to grab some of these seashells from Dollar Tree. You can get these in a couple different varieties. I was able to get all 3 varieties here, so I'm going to be using a mix of these. Also, you're going to grab some of these Dollar Tree candles. I love these. They come in a glass candle holder, and then some sand or some pebbles of some kind. Now, I am reusing some old candlesticks from a previous project. So mine were already painted, and they were this great navy. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take some hot glue and just glue down these candle holders because I'm going to be reusing a lot of my projects and trying to extend the life of some of these things. That way I don't constantly have to go out and buy stuff, or so I'm not wasting anything. And so all you're going to do is take your candle holder and literally just glue it right down on top of your candlestick. You can flip it over upside down, kind of like I did, just to make sure that it's straight because it's not going to go perfectly on there. And then if you need to, go through with some hot glue and just add a little bit of extra hot glue around the edge there. That way it will hold really good. And if you do this light enough, you're not even going to see the hot glue. And again, this is pretty easy to do. And then you'll just repeat it with your second candlestick as well. Once everything is dry, go ahead and add your sand or your pebbles to your glasses, kind of like I'm doing here. You can put as much or as little in here as you want to. I kind of want mine to have that beachy feel, so I'm putting a fairly decent amount of these pebbles in here. And then also you're going to take your seashells and just put these in the glasses. Now, what I'm doing is putting the shells kind of on the outer side of the center, kind of putting them around the edge of the inside of the glass there. And the reason why I'm doing that is because that candle holder is going to just kind of barely fit through there. And you'll see here in just a second that you have to kind of leave that space in order to do that. So take your candle holder, just kind of push it down in the center. And once you've kind of got those placed, then you can stick some of the shells in between, but you can see it's a little challenging to do that. So that's why I recommend doing it the other way. It's certainly not impossible. So again, just decorate it up however you like. All right, you guys, and here is the finished product. I absolutely love these. It gives the bathroom a very cool nautical feel still, but it elevates it. I think it makes it look very high-end, kind of like an expensive beach house versus a, inexpensive beach house. I'm assuming there's an inexpensive beach house out there somewhere, right? To use some items that were in my scrap drawer. So I had these 2 frames that were left over from a project I did with some of those Dollar Tree round mirrors. I also had these beads that I purchased on Amazon. I got them a couple weeks ago, and I'll include the link of how I bought them, or where I bought them rather, down below for everybody. And then you're just going to grab a piece of scrap cardboard. You could also probably enhance this if you had maybe some Dollar Tree contact paper or something like that to cover that cardboard up with, but I'm going to paint it anyway, so not such a big deal. But go ahead and trace out your 2 circles, and I always make sure I do a nice thick line around there because I'm half blind and can't really see anyway. And then I cut out both of those circles. And when I did cut them out, they were a little bit big, so I just trimmed them down, and then you're literally just going to glue them back to the frame as if there was a mirror there, but obviously there won't be a mirror there. The next thing I wanted to do was go ahead and glue my beads down. So I'm gluing the beads down kind of right on the edge of the cardboard there. That way, the beads create a really nice trim around the outside of this. That last little bead I had to turn sideways, but it did go in there and it looks perfect. I was pretty happy with the way that this turned out. Then it was time to kind of put some glue on top of all of the beads. You do this fairly quickly and just put your lid kind of on top of there. And then I took my folk art sheepskin paint and just started painting everything in that sheepskin color. I wanted to also kind of keep some of the wood beads uncovered with paint, if that makes sense. Like I wasn't using my sponge brush to get into all those little nooks and crannies, because after I'm done with this, I'm going to be using this antiquing wax to kind of go over everything again, and that will add some really cool textures and tones into this. So again, just waiting for both sides to dry and painting both sides of this, I was able to get everything covered and in about, I would say it was probably about 2.5 coats. I'm not a very patient painter, and I probably should get one of those heat guns. That way my paint drying time is less, because I tend to overpaint sometimes, and that can get me into some trouble, as you can imagine. But this one turned out pretty good. I was patient with this one and let it dry. And then also, because the base of this is dark, it's not a bad thing in this case, because I wanted some of that to show through, and I had planned on going back through and kind of aging this anyway. And then the very last thing I did was take my antiquing wax and just push it in between those beads and really covering everything with the antiquing wax. I did that for a reason, and you'll see kind of when the finished product is. It really makes it look like a bleached wood versus something that is, stained or even dirty looking to some degree. So then you'll go ahead and start wiping this off. And I did this for the tops, the fronts, the backs, the sides, literally everywhere that I could. And then when it's done, it makes a beautiful, beautiful impact on your coffee table and looks like this. I, again, love the way this looks. It's the perfect kind of a muted tone. I love the way that paint looks in between those beads and the way the edges and everything turned out. I am obsessed. Going to be using 13 of these Dollar Tree signs. You're also going to need 3 extras to use as support pieces, so 16 in total. Take your 13 signs outside and go ahead and just sand them up. You're going to sand them on all 4 sides. And also for the side that has the writing on it, if you want to sand it down a little bit more aggressive, feel free to do that. This is really dependent on what color you want to paint your table. For mine, I am going to be painting mine a dark navy, so sanding off the letters are not quite as important as it might be if you're choosing to maybe do something a little bit lighter for your project. After I sanded everything, I wiped everything down with a slightly damp cloth and then brought it inside to start assembling. So what I'm going to be doing is putting glue on each one of the corners of the brackets here. And you're just going to start building your table kind of like so. So as you add a piece across, then you're going to glue 2 pieces up and down. And I'm just using my Gorilla Wood glue for this as I'm building each one of my layers. And then at the very end of this, you'll see that we'll go through and we'll actually add in some wood screws to make sure that this is all holding together really well. So as you can see here, I've got my completed tower, almost completed anyway. I'm going to add one more piece to the top there. But once I did that, this is what it will look like when it's all solid. And then here are the screws that I did put in just to help hold everything together really nicely and to obviously make sure this is sturdy. I took it outside and gave it 2 coats of my navy blue, midnight blue paint, which I love. After it was dry, I brought it inside and it was the perfect modern looking side table. How cute is this frickin' table? I love it.